I've been so blessed with lots of nice weather now, working very hard from sunrise to sunset. And in this episode I'm sharing some details about budget, weight differences between carbon fiber and conventional polyester and glass fiber, and even how much added weight will be compared to canvas and metal tubes. Join me as I'm sailing around the world on Be Free, a Bavaria 55 cruiser. This is not a how-to video, it's more like how I do it. And the solution I choose might not be the best for you, but it's the best for me here where I am at the moment, what's available for me, and also the choice of materials. I'm gonna walk you through and explain why. I choose to go with honeycomb because it's a brilliant material for making a mock-up, and also it's like super strong when it's laminated, so it's a very good solution for me here. It's quite funny because start with a mock-up, which basically is the core material for the end result. And also you have to keep in mind it's a huge difference between making a one-off, which is a prototype, than making a mold and reproduction later. On this, when you have a mold, you can use different techniques, and also different materials are more suitable, and you can even save weight. But I'm gonna keep a huge focus on weight. I'm gonna keep the weight down, and with honeycomb as core material I can make this super light and still very strong. And my goal is actually to make this hurricane safe and also possible to remove without leaving any tracks, so there will be no visual signs that it has ever had a hard dodger and hardtop. If one day I find out I want to sell this boat, and potentially new owner find out like, no, I don't want it like this, I want the slick design that's original from far, which I can understand as well. But I have no intentions of selling Be Free in anytime soon, so for me this is a good solution and something I've been wanting to have for a long time. And being in Southeast Asia, the material cost is ridiculous cheap, and I'm gonna walk you through this as well. So I made the frame for support for the curve, but I might need to change it because I want to follow the lines. There are some things that works on paper that does not work in real life, which makes it really good to do this on location. It makes it much more complicated, a lot of hard work, but it is easier to do things when it's on location. I am probably the slowest worker in the world. I can spend hours studying my work from different angles, seeing things that I'm not happy with. Labor costs are really cheap here, but I prefer to do this myself. Also during this stage, I believe not many would enjoy my artistic approach, spending so much time on details. Not to forget the task it would be to explain how I see things in a foreign language in a different culture. I'm working after my 3 F's principle: finance, form and function, trying to find the best compromises, and at least I'm rich on time as it's still not season for sailing. I'm gonna follow the design lines here, which means I need to expand this out a little bit and make it more curved. That's how it is to making a prototype, and instead of being annoyed having overlooked this detail, I embrace the benefit of building and designing this on site as I move forward. Consequences of these changes might not be too obvious not being here. Also, the details of my 3D design are also only inside my head. My pre-cut templates for the curves can be thrown away now, and I for sure have created 2 days of added time to this mock-up. Even though last week has blessed me with lots of nice weather, rain and thunderstorms are also slowing me down, not only my thinking process as I go. Lots of modifications needed now, but that's how it is. Still, I think it's worth it, as I believe putting some effort into the aesthetic part will pay off later. During this stage, it was also easier to see the overall design lines. And if you remember from previous episode, I said I wanted to feel like this, but to look like this. So I have decided to try making an illusion that it's lower than it is by lowering the roof, and the curves will help me to make it look slimmer than it is. The wood frame and supports are only for construction and design work. It will all be removed step by step when I'm starting to laminate the honeycomb, and I will soon explain what I have chosen and why. So one of the biggest fears for a solo sailor is fatigue. Sailing around in Southeast Asia and basically all kind of subtropical climate, it's very hard. I need shade because I sleep in the cockpit, and I also need protection from the rain so I don't get wet, and also more like practical things to protect the cockpit table, the cockpit floor, and the cushions and everything. So it's sort of mandatory to have in Southeast Asia and also in tropical, subtropical climate. But the most important for me is like the safety side of it, because it will protect me better from fatigue. So one of the things I've been missing with the Bimini I had was that I could not walk on the side from aft, because it's a low profile and the boom is sitting pretty low. The low profile is my biggest challenge, and the third F in my formula is something I do not want to compromise here. I believe having headroom for walking towards the stairs down should be mandatory on a yacht this size. So this is the reason I have invested so much time in the early stage of the design process at this point. With adjustments in place, I used cheap plywood to make new templates and thin stringers to measure the supports for the new curved shape. And with so many curves and shapes morphing into a very defined shape, I found it fastest and easiest to use a glue gun. Just glue the strings of honeycomb into this complex shape. When done, I can use thickened polyester and sand it before laminating. And all the support will be removed from underneath later. And now and then, the weather reminds me about the fact it's monsoon season. But I tried to be effective and mass-produce supports that I found to be a very fast and easy way to achieve my complex design. And as you can see on this photo, it will now be a walk around, which I believe should be mandatory on a yacht this size. It's time to talk about budgets and the reason for why I've chosen to go for polyester resin and glass cloth. Carbon fiber and epoxy would probably to some sound like a better alternative, given the fact one key element on a sailing yacht is weight. Another key element is what's available where I am, but it's more to it and I will break it down, just how I did to myself. Even though you need more resin per kilo carbon fiber compared to glass cloth, the lightweight of the carbon fiber are covering a greater surface per kilo than glass cloth. This has to be taken into the equation when calculating, and in theory you can save as much as 30% weight going with carbon fiber. However, in reality, due to production method and not made in a mold with a vacuum bag, my estimates are the difference will not be that great, most likely less than 15%. More important, carbon fiber are not ideal for this kind of construction and production method. Remember, this is a one-off build and not reproduction in a mold. I'm not saying it's impossible, my opinion here is only based on my experience. I will share my total budget in a minute, but as you can see, the cost difference between glass and carbon is quite significant. In fact, it would increase the cost with 1036% or more than 10 times if you like, meaning we are talking about quite a lot of money in this size of project. Also, where I am, carbon fiber needs to be imported as it's not out of a shelf product here. If you look away from the fact carbon fiber is not ideal for this production method, the difference between $2 and $25 per meter cloth is also hard to defend. You might not agree with me, and that's okay, because this is only my conclusion from my project that I share with you, without claiming this is the blueprint or the best for you. The biggest argument against the hardtop for most sailors are weight, and this is something I've been focusing on. I was blown away after checking the weight on my metal tubes after adding up the total weight. Not in my wildest imagination would I ever guessed a total weight coming in at 120 kilos. But then again, B3 has a spacious cockpit, and the Bimini was 4.4 meter wide and 32 millimeter stainless tubes. In fact, when I took it apart, I was a bit surprised how heavy the tubes are, because they have always been fixed and only moved aft, meaning the fittings has carried all the load. Just out of curiosity, I decided to calculate the total weight of my canvas and metal tube alternative to a hardtop. To be able to make a budget for this project, calculating weight is essential, as end of the day all the materials has a cost per kilo. This is of course qualified guessing based on some experience and measurements with the formula resin towards glass cloth per kilo. I want to point out this might be subject to changes but should not be too far from the truth. Time will show, and I will share this when I know more. Key factor here is to not use more resin than absolutely necessary. This is the part where most amateurs make their mistakes, making it not only heavier than necessary, but even weaker, with risks of cracks later. I'm definitely not an expert. Still, it's not the first time I do something crazy like this, so I'll try my best to keep the weight down. If I succeed, the weight difference will be surprisingly small, only twice the weight and canvas, give or take. The relatively low weight given the size of B3 means this will not affect much on performance. In fact, I doubt it will even be possible to notice. I'm not a fanatic when it comes to weight, but I do pay close attention to it. And for B3 the margins are pretty good, with a load capacity of 16 persons and 2,650 kilos, all weather, all oceans. Given the fact B3 is an owner's version and only sleeps 6 persons on an ocean passage, I believe my margins should be pretty good on my side. I did this exercise to also have a qualified opinion about carbon fiber, because this was also in my mind. But as I pointed out earlier, carbon fiber is not ideal for a project like this unless you make a mold and bake it from there. Meaning, due to the nature of carbon fiber and this production method, my estimates of resin are increased compared to production in a mold with vacuum. Again, you don't have to agree with me, this is my numbers based on my experience and qualified guessing. However, I do believe worst case scenario the weight difference will not be much, and in best case maybe 35 to 50 kilo. Only to repeat my argument, this is due to the production method and a fairly complex design. So it should not come as a surprise, the winner in this competition, from my opinion, is glass fiber, after taking all the factors into consideration. To me, it's impossible to defend project cost versus saved weight. It also shows making a hardtop and dodger is a no-brainer compared to the weight costs, not to forget the lifespan of the canvas version. It's for sure possible to cut not only weight but even the cost as a consequence for the carbon fiber version. However, in order to do so, you would need to make this prototype preferably in glass fiber as mentioned earlier, and then make a mold to reproduce this the way that's the best method for carbon fiber with this size and complexity. Meaning, before you have even produced a single one in carbon, you are looking at a minimum double this cost only to start. Only to save the best case scenario in terms of weight, and of course cutting the production cost and time later. However, I'm only gonna make this one for my own needs, meaning it's hard to beat a budget of only $1,500. If I succeed remains to be seen, but I promise to be transparent even if I fail. But for now, I'm only buying what I need for the Mockup. Now I'm getting more polyester, but it's raining. But here is the guy. For now, I only use the polyester for gluing pieces together, and also closing the cells at the ends with polyester thickened with micro balloons. I'm gonna share more about this in the next episode, and things to think about using this method to avoid delamination later. So I don't buy too much because I have to carry everything on board myself. But I guess it's not gonna be more work today. So it's a perfect day for shopping instead. There are some pitfalls using this method to build a one-off product like a hardtop, and I will also share this in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you haven't already, I will be very happy to see you subscribe. And I also want to send out a big thank you to all the new patrons. And it's also possible to sign up on the Patreon. You will find the link in the description. Okay, thank you so much, and see you next time.